Jesus is here perhaps his most explicit when it comes to the kind of revolution that he is initiating, embodying, beginning, the reign of the kingdom. When he is so explicit in his challenge of the status and honour that was so fundamentally important in the ancient world. Now, in the Jewish scriptures, you have already a strong sense of God being close to the downtrodden, to the crushed, to the poor. But Jesus really, as we know, draws it out, insists on it being, in a way, the major theme. Honour in the ancient world meant everything, especially for the Greeks and Romans, and that was the milieu in which so much of the scriptures were received. Humility simply wasn't a virtue. Humility meant being crushed, downtrodden, being lower than your status should require. Hubris was seen as a flaw, and we have the myth of Narcissus, etc., and the ancient Greek tragedies where hubris is the great flaw of the tragic hero. But that didn't mean they believed in humilitas in the Latin. Humility was shameful. We swim in an ocean of Christianity, in a kind of secular post-Christian way. Today, most of our politicians would be horrified at the drop in the polls that would occur if they spoke about themselves in the self-flattering way that the ancients, their leaders, spoke about themselves. Extraordinary boasting was normal. It wasn't considered embarrassing, let alone vicious. It was considered appropriate that you were explaining why you should be given honour. Modesty was a virtue of sorts, but modesty was not the same as lowering yourself to be close to the poor or the vanquished or the downtrodden. Modesty meant you had self-control. You weren't an extravagant, sort of reckless person. Not the same as humility. The early Christians were known for their preaching about humilitas. They're living it out. Jesus is explicit here, but really the reason the Christians were so clear about humility being a virtue and this being part of Jesus' revolution in the world, that humility should become a virtue at all, is because of the way he died. He died as the punishment of punishments, the most humiliating thing the Romans could possibly do. Horrific torture, hung naked on the edge of the city. And we do domesticate the crucifix. It is a horrific symbol and reality. The way he died was meant to vanquish, tear away any honour that he may have had or his followers in the ancient world. But of course we know the opposite happened. And for the early Christians, his glory was in his humiliation, his going willingly to such a vile, embarrassing and shameful death. To say it backfired on the Romans is an understatement. Christians began to believe what he'd been preaching and living his whole life, but in the crucifixion we see debasement, as awful as it is, as undesirable as it is, closeness to the debased, close to those who had their honour stripped by the world, is the pathway to heaven, is the pathway to union with God the Father. To willingly sit, mix with the poor and the broken in our tradition is the most powerful thing we can do spiritually. And to realise our own need for that grace, to humble ourselves the way the Lord humbled himself to become one of us, to take on our flesh. So now, generally speaking, though we see some dreadful kind of throwbacks to a pagan honour system among some world leaders. As a general rule, humility as a virtue is accepted in our culture. Rosenweg, who was a Jewish philosopher in the First World War, wrote his book of philosophy called The Star of Redemption on the back of postcards. He then published it after the war. And he was an admirer of Christian values. But he said, sitting in those trenches, he realised there was a pagan heart beating at the heart of Europe as well. Always in tension, always in competition with those Christian values. And it's still the case today. Whenever we are seduced, lured by the desire to have honour given to us, my rightful place, my achievements recognised, we're now in the language of the evil spirit, moving us further away from Christ. As natural as it might seem to want our honour given to us, it's not what we're created for. To be grounded in Jesus Christ, to believe that giving up, handing over, at times our power and our supposed honour, that is the way to be close to Him. That is a radical, strange, revolutionary idea that we're still trying to get our heads around 2,000 years later. It was a radical and strange idea in the ancient world. And here we have Jesus, the totally free man, confronting his host at this banquet. No doubt a powerful man, speaking truth to power. Don't think that clinging to power or searching for power will make you happy or fulfill you. No. Letting go of it the way he did. This is his message. This is the revolution of love. But it's Christian love. It's not always obvious to the world. We needed him to be stripped and hung on a cross for us to begin to understand the true nature